Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Prime Answers, the show that's basically about whatever the hell I feel like talking about, and then I answer some questions. And usually what I feel like talking about is about the channel, and it's been an interesting week. A wonderful week, but an interesting one. So for those who didn't hear the news, which many of you have, I lost my primary source of revenue this week, which is essentially I lost a job. That job supported what I was able to do at the channel because it was a job I did not need to work very hard at anymore because I had gotten so good at it that I was able to streamline it to a point that I was making significant revenue every single month that enabled me to spend a lot of time working on YouTube, even though I don't even make minimum wage for the amount of hours I put in on YouTube. With obviously the long-term goal that YouTube would continue to grow, which it has over the past 2 years, and would reach a point where it would be financially viable for me not to have any other job. But we're not at that point yet, and it was a little scary when I was informed without much warning that I was going to be losing that job, because it's not a kind of job where I can get unemployment. It's not a kind of job that I qualify for really much of any help, because it was a volunteer position that enabled me to sell official merchandise and make a commission on a Facebook page. And when that happens and you're just a volunteer that's allowed to run the page until the person who owns the page no longer wants you to run it, it just becomes a very, very sticky situation. That being said, it's also led to some amazing happenings this week. Our Patreon has grown to the largest it's ever been. Not only did we surpass our goal of doing weekly editorials, we also surpassed our goal of doing monthly reviews, which means the pressure's really on because reviews are intense. And the first review I have coming is for Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and I know it's late, so the angle of the review is going to be more about if it's still worth picking up the game here right now in 2019, especially with the new generation ahead. So that's us, and a whole bunch of other games. There's a lot of games going out in 2019. So it's a pretty big debate on whether or not, if you haven't picked it up yet, if it's still worth picking up. So that's something that that review is going to tackle, and it's by far the most intense review I've ever done because I can't just record gameplay and give an opinion. I think that would not be doing a review justice because there's all the different control schemes, and I need to show that off. It's not like it's the same controls in docked and handheld. So it's going to be a difficult review to do just from an editing perspective, from a filming perspective, because I can't have anyone behind the camera. So like when I take this camera here and I'm shooting at over my shoulder with holding the switch, I have no way to verify that angle is actually working, right? There's no way for me to know if I'm in camera view, and I have to play like that for an hour straight and then check the footage. I'm working out a method of mirrors and trying to make it so I can at least see if I'm in frame, but it's still kind of a hassle, and obviously you don't want those mirrors visible, so it's honestly, it's just because I lack all the proper equipment to really do it right as a solo act. But you know what? I'm doing the best I can. But it's gonna be a fun review that I know I'm gonna be very proud of the end product, even if it only gets a few hundred views. Which, let's be honest, it's a late review of Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. I don't even know if it was on time if it would have got more than a few hundred views. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the angle I'm taking with it will feel unique enough that people will be willing to tune in just to see what my thoughts are on the game now that we are in the next year with the next gen coming and all of the other stuff going on. Beyond that, I have a lot of mixed feelings about a lot of things at the channel, but one thing I am sure of is that I've got about 3 months here to push the channel as hard as I can to try to make it on YouTube. Yeah, I do make a decent paycheck here on YouTube if I didn't have children, but I have children. They need to be supported. I can get by for a few months, although with what's happening with the government shutdown right now and the possible delay of tax returns, I might be in trouble sooner than I hope, because I was actually going to rely on the tax return to float me for a month or two while I figure things out. But it is what it is. If push comes to shove and I have to go get a full-time job, like all of you guys out there, and not do YouTube anymore. That's just the reality. Now, I will say our Patreon, the stuff that the patrons pay for on Patreon, all of those things will still be done every single week or once a month and stuff like that. So the channel won't completely die. The big thing that goes away is all the news coverage, and a lot of you guys watch us for the news coverage, so I don't want that to go away. I enjoy covering news, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. For now, I am pushing the channel as hard as I've ever pushed it, and boy, has it paid off this week. We have gotten a lot of views on all of our videos. We had 17 videos come out, which is the most I have put out in a week in quite a while. I think I topped out at 14 a few weeks ago, and I'm really enjoying it. I've gotten into a good content flow, mixing up the editorials and discussion videos, and news videos, standalone new videos. I know Prime News is a weekly recap show that I kind of redid in what I feel was a pretty entertaining way. If you haven't seen the new episode of Prime News and you've seen prior Prime News episodes, go check out this one, because this one is massively different than any other Prime News video I've done before. So yeah, it's it's a fun one. I'm actually curious what people think about it, because I've gotten some thoughts on it, but not as many thoughts as I hoped. So I'm curious if people like that format and if it's something I should stick to for the rest of 2019. But yeah, I don't want to sit here and focus too much on the negative, because there's been so much public outcry, public pouring out of people wanting me to make this work, saying they're going to miss me if I have to go away or if I can't produce the content at the level I'm currently producing. And oh man, I wish I could make promises and guarantees, but I can't right now. All I can do is keep you updated. Right now, I'm okay. And I'm going to be okay for the rest of this month. And I will be okay for the rest of February. It's after that when I have to start, seeing where things lie with tax returns and seeing where things lie with a revenue increase. But again, if you want to, patreon.com/Nintendo Prime is the best way to ensure we're going to do this. If we could double the revenue on there from where it is now, I am way more confident we can continue doing this, regardless of what growth or what revenue growth happens on YouTube. But no pressure to support if you don't want to. I've always made this content for free for you guys, so this is a passion project as much as it is. Well, it's not really a hobby for me. It's always been a passion project to make this my dream job. So I guess I've always done YouTube with the intent of doing it for a living, which is crazy because I always tell people never become a YouTuber with the intent of making money. But I was making money before I had any intent to make it my career. So, I mean, I was in a different situation, I guess. I didn't start from square zero necessarily, just because I was able to build a following off of prior jobs I've had in the Nintendo community. So I am a very interesting use case that no one should follow in how to build a channel, because, again, I had a decade plus of experience elsewhere in the Nintendo community and already had a following. As an example, I have a Facebook page for Nintendo Prime that has over 60,000 likes on it. Why? Because people were following me from my other places where I've worked. That being said, let me just get into your questions, because I can go on and on about this all day, and I've talked so much about what's going on with me and this channel this week that I don't want to waste anyone's time. In fact, we might even fly through these questions just because just do a shorter episode, because I'm going to have a lot of content coming out today. Usually don't have much. Usually this is like the only video on a Saturday, but there's going to be a lot of content coming today, at least 2 more videos. So that being said, the first question comes from Tunacan1 on YouTube. He says, why do I love lollies so much, and should lollies be legal? I don't know what lollies are. Is it a drug? I don't know. When I hear the word lolly, I think of lollipop. I'm assuming it's a drug, so I can't tell you because I don't know what it is. And I know it's a troll question. I get it, but all right. He also asked, could Death Stranding come exclusively for Nintendo 3DS? And that is when I realized that it was a troll comment. So, you know what? No. It's coming exclusively for the DS. Just thought I'd throw it out there. After all, DS has Grand Theft Auto. It's clearly going to get Death Stranding. Switch can't get either. Switch can't run them. Can't handle it. Next one comes from YouTube Channel 1. He says, how long do you think it will be before another mainline 3D Mario game is released? I hope they keep Cappy for good. Now that I played with him, I think it makes it even better. Unless they do an Odyssey 2, I don't think you're going to see Cappy again. Cappy was kind of like this game's, quote-unquote gimmick. They kind of do that. They used to do it with Zelda all the time. Each game had its own gimmick, was the same formula, and they were doing it with Mario too. This is the gimmick for this game, but it's still the same base Mario game. So that was kind of the gimmick. It's a really nice gimmick. It's really fun. I like Cappy a lot too, but I don't think we're going to see Cappy sticking around for many more Mario games. Maybe one more. So if they do a Mario Odyssey 2, like they did with Galaxy 2 on the Wii, next year. Next year is the perfect timing for another Zelda game and another Mario game, because it will have been 3 years since the last major Zelda game and last major Mario game. And that is a good enough gap to pull that off. On top of that, there's a ton of games already coming out this year. So if you look at, if there was a new Zelda and a new Mario game next year, that would be potentially, in addition to Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3, that's already 4 major titles for next year, in addition to all the ones this year and ones we don't even know about. So it gives Switch a really nice library through 2020, in my honest opinion. And this is not even counting the fact that we still could get another Mario Kart on the platform, because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, for as awesome as it's selling, it's still a port. There's a chance Mario Kart 9 could actually be a thing someday. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think a 3D Mario is probably coming next year in some form. Next up is from Angelo Mate 1. He says, I know not everyone is interested in this, but you know something about the spiritual successor of Advance Wars, Wargroove. It's been a while and no news about it. I haven't heard any news about Wargroove at all either, so I'm sorry I have no updates for you. I will say it's not the only spiritual successor out there. Tiny Metal, that I reviewed way back in January of 2018? Yeah, 2018. That game is phenomenal. I rated it very, very high. Tiny Metal was everything I wanted out of a new Advance Wars game. So Wargroove looks really cool too, but I mean, Tiny Metal is literally like a new Advance Wars game. So if you're still looking for that, you have that Advance Wars itch, go look up Tiny Metal on the eShop. It's a very, very good game. Let's see here. Wrath of the Math 1 says, Wrath of Math, I should say, says, do you think the ship has sailed on Mario Odyssey DLC? What is your most wanted hypothetical DLC for any Switch game? Okay, so many questions here. Do you think the ship has sailed on Mario Odyssey DLC? No. But I think the ship has sailed on it being a type of DLC that can't be standalone, as in a Torna-style DLC, but you don't actually need to own Odyssey to play it. So think of Luigi U, how that was like a standalone thing you could buy for like, what was it, $40 or something on Wii U. I think that is something that could happen this year for Mario Odyssey. But it all depends on if they're planning for a Mario Odyssey 2. If that's the case, then we won't get it. So it all depends on what their actual plans are. What is your most wanted hypothetical DLC for any Switch game? I can't honestly. I mean, besides Banjo-Kazooie for Smash, I can't honestly think of any, because not that I don't like DLC, but I always look forward to new games more than DLC. So I don't really have like, I'm trying to think of a game that I even want DLC for, and all the games I want DLC for already have them. So I think I'm good on that front, including details. So I might say my most wanted is Odyssey DLC. I kind of figured based on, and let me guess, Delfino Island, yeah. And in particular, Delfino Island / Delfino Plaza, Sunshine Kingdom. Yeah, I hear you. Or that could just be in Mario Odyssey 2. Dynamic Kirby says, hypothetically speaking, if Nintendo were to go third party, would they be as successful as they are now as a console manufacturer? What are your thoughts? In my opinion, I personally don't think so. Or rather, I don't think that they would be the same kind of successful, if that makes any sense. I feel that Nintendo is more of a brand than they are a game developer. While they most definitely would make a lot of profit as a third-party developer, I feel that they would just be that, a game developer / publisher, and not a brand anymore. I mean, you can still be a brand. EA is still a brand. Ubisoft's still a brand. Anyways. I feel like there is something valuable and pristine about a company being a brand that manufactures different products and services. If Nintendo went third party, while yes, they'd be profitable, I feel like their overall relevancy as a company would decrease significantly. Their games would also be affected. A game like ARMS, as a third-party multiplat, would probably be overshadowed and possibly ignored, despite it coming from a renowned developer. However, ARMS as an exclusive first-party highlighted game for a console instantly gives it more attention and relevancy than it otherwise wouldn't have had. That's just my 2 cents. What do you think? Well, in the case of ARMS, you're probably right. I don't think ARMS as a multi-platform game would have worked. But I also don't think ARMS would have existed if Nintendo was multi-platform, because there isn't a single platform out there that has motion controls front and center. It might have come out as an AR game potentially, or like a VR game for like a PlayStation VR, and been a really highly reviewed VR game, but in general, I don't think ARMS would have existed because those platforms don't have the natural control mechanisms for a game like ARMS. So, yeah, ARMS would have been ignored, but it's just because ARMS wouldn't exist. Not in this hypothetical, different type of Nintendo that we're talking about. The kind of things you would see Nintendo put out is Zelda games would come out more often, 3D Mario games would come out more often, Kirby would end up probably performing better. You'd see a lot of them milking their franchises more than they already do milk their franchises, and they would probably still experiment with new IPs, but they would do that in partnership with the console manufacturers like Sony and Microsoft to be like, hey, look, we're going to be making Splatoon, right? Like that's their new IP this time. We're going to be making Splatoon, but we're only going to bring it to your platform if you are willing to give us a featured spot in your eShop and in commercials. And I bet you, because of Nintendo's pull with Mario and Zelda and Pokemon and all that stuff, the console manufacturers would say, sure, why not? Because they already do this with Ubisoft and EA, so why wouldn't they do it with Nintendo? Now, here's the thing. What you have to remember is there's different ways to measure success. You're measuring, like, they wouldn't be as successful because the brand would be lessened to the point that they can't launch these new ideas like Labo as an example and find success. And you would be right, but they would be more successful in that they would be a more profitable company. This was true of Sega when they left the console market. They became more profitable, and this is massively true. Like who are some of the most powerful companies in the video game industry besides Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo? It's EA and Ubisoft, right? EA and Ubisoft are bigger. EA could literally buy Nintendo. Like all that money in the bank Nintendo has, that's like a butt wipe for EA, the kind of money they have rolling in. Now, some of that's because of the way they design their games, but it's also that's just how the industry goes. Nintendo would just like Sega would make more money as a multi-platform company than they would on their own. However, what Nintendo does have going for them when they do hardware, and it's weird for me saying this because I've argued in the past that Nintendo would make less money going third party because of the royalties they make off of all the games that sell on their hardware, but unfortunately a lot of the times it's only their games selling on their hardware. I think that Nintendo is better off as a console manufacturer because I think it's better for the industry to have a company that's challenging the norms of the industry from a hardware perspective, even if we don't always agree with the directions that Nintendo goes in or the naming conventions and all that stuff. So I think Nintendo is better for consumers and better for the industry as a console manufacturer. And thankfully, Nintendo is so profitable doing it that they probably can't imagine a future where they don't. So I think they could potentially be more profitable, but you would see less of the riskier IPs, more of a sure thing or something that would be a sure thing due to having marketing agreements. So Nintendo would absolutely probably be bigger overall in terms of revenue, but I don't know. I mean, Ubisoft and EA don't really have less mind share, so I don't know. It'd be an interesting future, but it's one that we ultimately are just guessing at. Maybe I could do a what if video on it sometime, like what if Nintendo went third party, which would instantly get a bunch of dislikes. But I have a feeling once I do my research, my overall take on it's going to be, well, it'd actually be a pretty positive thing, which again is going to get even more dislikes, but then also like covering the negatives and the positives. And who knows? I'm hoping that my fan base is mature enough not to see a title like that and just instantly hate it, because I don't want Nintendo to go third party. But if it were to happen, like here's what I am seeing based on the numbers, based on the interest, based on what other companies in similar situations have had happen to them. All right. Cody Shadley says, do you think Nintendo not only hears the online criticism, they definitely hear it, but wants to appease both gamers and investors by promising to invest more in making the online service better, while also continuing to do what they're doing until the Switch Pro takes over? One, we don't know the Switch Pro will ever take over. We don't even know if the Switch Pro exists, so I'm going to set that aside. Nintendo cares about appeasing investors more than anything. All companies are like that, because if the investors aren't pleased, you don't exist. So, yeah, I don't like promising to invest more in making the online service better. Nintendo hasn't promised to make the online service better. That promise does not exist. There is zero promise from Reggie or from Furukawa that the online service is going to improve. We assume it's going to improve. We implore Nintendo to improve the service, but they've never actually told us it's going to. So your entire premise of your question is based on a false reality. Nintendo never talked about improving their online service. Investors love the online service. They love milking consumers. Nintendo has never promised they're going to do anything different with the online service than they're already doing. We just hope they're going. Well, that's not true. They did mention like that one feature with the app about setting up like groups to like game later, like do game invites and do that, and that doesn't exist. So I guess they've promised features that aren't there and are now scrapped. But yeah, I mean, we presume it's going to get better. But Nintendo actually never told us it's going to. What they have listed on their current online website for the Nintendo Switch Online is exactly what the service is, with no guarantees it'll ever be more than that. Moving on, Nick Figures says, how could a Nintendo Switch Pro encourage more third-party games to come over if more than likely the games would have to run on the base Switch anyway? Very, very good question, because that seems to be the prevailing presumption, is that if a Switch Pro comes out, how does that guarantee more third parties? So let me start by saying the Switch Pro itself doesn't guarantee more of anything. Third parties are seemingly already coming over to Switch, as is this year. What the Switch Pro does is it extends the life of the Switch for third-party games. So what do I mean? The Bethesdas of the world. EA might potentially start bringing games over. Ubisoft has brought over a few. Maybe they're going to start bringing the next Assassin's Creed or something, right? And that'll be on the base model Switch while the Pro Switch is out, if that's even a thing. And when the Pro Switch is out and things are progressing forward, yeah, eventually there'll be third-party games that are only for the Switch Pro. But it'll only be after the Switch Pro has a big enough install base. And it should have a big enough install base around the time or shortly thereafter when the next Xbox and PlayStation land. So the idea isn't so much about a Switch Pro landing next year, guaranteeing more third-party support next year or in 2020. It's about guaranteeing third-party support down the line when the base Nintendo Switch looks obsolete. So it's basically trying to be like an Xbox One X, but lasts longer. Xbox One X has actually helped boost Xbox sales over the last couple of years, and Nintendo wants to see that happen with the Pro. Maintain your momentum with the Pro, and when you have that 20, 30 million install base, third-party developers might stop making versions of it for the OG Switch and just make it for the Pro Switch, especially if they're porting a version from the PlayStation 5. So that's kind of the idea. The idea isn't so much that it's going to guarantee Nintendo gets more third-party games. It's going to just enable third parties to continue to support Switch as a platform on the whole for a longer period of time. So that's really the way I look at it. I think third parties are coming to Switch this year, or at least some are, just because of how popular it is. Switch Pro is just addressing a future problem. It's addressing the PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 or Scarlet or whatever issue. It's addressing the next gen problem. That would be the idea of a Switch Pro, at least in my opinion. And no, it still wouldn't be as powerful as those platforms. It's about offering enough of an upgrade to continue to get third-party games like we're already getting in some cases. Let's see here. Cloud D says, do you think Nintendo Switch will get Call of Duty game this year? I hope so, but who knows? The thing is Activision just lost their second CFO in a week. They had their original CFO leave after bad financial results or pending bad financial results for 2018. And then the new CFO that took over took a look at the financials and bolted out the door. Probably knowing that they would just get fired once the financials become public. Doesn't mean Activision's in trouble, blah, blah, blah. No, they had a bad year in comparison to prior years. They still were probably profitable, but it's just not the numbers they're used to seeing from Blizzard games, which is why some of the Blizzard staff is being cut back, and from Call of Duty games and stuff like that. So, which is probably why they started tacking in all those microtransactions and charging for a red dot reticule because, they're trying to get money because their numbers aren't looking as good. That being said, I think one thing they might consider for the next Call of Duty is Switch. Because they might look, our numbers aren't doing that good. Would they be better with Switch? Like, would we be more profitable if we included a Switch version than without? And they might look at it as, hey, look at what happened with Call of Duty on Wii. It kept selling over 1 million copies. That was well worth it. It'll be well worth it on Switch too. So I do think there's probably a 50-50 shot we get the Call of Duty game, just because they need to find more consumers to buy their products. And right now, they have an untapped market on Switch to buy their products that doesn't really have a ton of competition for a Call of Duty style game. So I think they're going to try to get on here. If EA doesn't beat them to the punch and bring Battlefield 5 over. And the thing is, Battlefield 5 has such poor reviews, I don't know that it would even sell well on Switch, but maybe. I don't know. I have Battlefield 5 for my Xbox One X, I just haven't tried it yet. I'm curious to see if it's as bad now that it's been patched and everything as it was at launch. Ben Van Boven says, I hear you complain a lot about DLC. I don't remember complaining that much. I think Piranha Plant might have been like the only DLC complaint I can even think of. Anyways, you said about the Smash Bros. DLC that it should be free. The Piranha Plant DLC should be free. Because Nintendo makes enough money and will make enough money from Smash to be able to release all DLC for free. I mean, yeah, that's true. It doesn't mean they should, but it's true. I was more focused on the Piranha Plant DLC, that it's free for some and not for others. It should just be free for everyone. Anyways, my question is, would you rather have paid DLC or no DLC at all? And do you think the way Nintendo goes about this is bad? I personally think paid DLC is cool. And if you think it's too expensive or it doesn't interest you, then you just shouldn't buy it. I also think that when Nintendo releases paid DLC isn't bad. Nintendo is still a business and needs to make money. They don't owe us anything. If they would ever release DLC for a game I play that would be too expensive and not worth the money for me, I wouldn't buy it. This was the case with the Rabbids and Splatoon 2 DLC. So when I read this the first time, my jaw dropped to the floor, because the Mario plus Rabbids and the Splatoon 2 DLC are some of the most content-rich DLC literally in the video game industry. The content richness of that DLC exceeds the cost of the DLC by a significant amount. The Splatoon 2 DLC is almost bigger than the Splatoon game. Like, Splatoon 2 itself is almost a smaller game than the Splatoon 2 DLC. The Splatoon 2 DLC is that big. The Mario plus Rabbids stuff, like, the DLC for that is almost half the size of the original game. Like, it's well worth the money. Now, if you didn't enjoy those games enough to buy the DLC, that's different. But, like, money to content, like, crazy amount of content in those DLC packs. Totally disagree with your examples, but they're personal. You wouldn't buy them. Fine. But no, here's the thing. Your question was, would I rather have paid DLC or no DLC at all? Nintendo gives us DLC of all types. If you remember, Splatoon 2 has been getting free content updates until that DLC, and now it doesn't really get free content updates anymore because they stopped it. But you know what I'm saying? ARMS had free content updates for a long time. Mario Odyssey had some free content updates, getting new costumes and stuff. So, like, Nintendo is giving us free DLC for some games and only charging us for the really big DLC packs that are usually worth the money. So, I say usually. There is some debate on if the Breath of the Wild DLC, in my opinion, was worth the money. Maybe we'll get into that another day. And again, if I get into it and I sound negative, it's not because I'm attacking the DLC. I actually really like the Breath of the Wild DLC, but I also really love Breath of the Wild, so I have some bias. But it's a little interesting, especially since they promised story DLC. Questionable if there's really much story to that second DLC pack. There's content. There's, I guess, a story, but it really has nothing. Oh, anyways, I don't want to spoil it for anyone right now. That's something I'll worry about for that video. So would I rather them have paid DLC or no DLC? Well, we don't live in a paid DLC or no DLC world. So, I mean, as a consumer, I'd rather have free DLC because they give us free DLC for some games. But, I mean, I don't mind paid DLC. I'm not against paid DLC. I've been buying expansion packs since I was a little tyke at like 5 years old. Age of Empires, like, I've been buying expansion packs forever. I have no problem with spending money for more content in a game or significant extra content in a game. My issue was Piranha Plant DLC being free for some consumers and not for others. That is a practice I am against. The actual fighting pass is fine. Yes, they could. Yeah, I was making a generalized point when I talked about the Piranha Plant DLC that if Nintendo wanted, they could afford to give us that entire fighting pass for free. Of course they could. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They can afford to pretty much give consumers anything they want to give them and still be profitable. That's not really the problem. I don't have a problem with the way they're doing the Fighter Pass DLC for Smash. My problem was the Piranha Plant, which is not part of that DLC, is going to be sold separately but given to some people for free. I don't think that's a smart... Oh, it's a smart business move. I don't think it's a pro-consumer move. And a lot of people disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But I'm not against DLC. I love DLC, especially from Nintendo games. Like Mario Kart 8's DLC on Wii U was awesome. Hyrule Warriors was awesome. You know? Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle was awesome. Splatoon 2's was awesome. Like, there are plenty of amazing examples of great DLC for the price. But, yeah, the Smash DLC is probably worth the money, too. So... yeah, it's just kind of an interesting way of perceiving what I was saying when I was really just talking about one method. They were giving out DLC, which they were for free for some and charging for others. That I'm against. And I know some people got mad at me. Oh, so you'd rather they charge everyone? I mean, if that was if they would have came out and said Piranha Plant was one of the fighters in the DLC pack, would anyone really be angry? Like, probably not. So, you know, if that's what they would have announced from the beginning, but it's just because they didn't announce it that way. Of course, they'd be mad now. They can't go back on it now. But, anyways, Thomas Maynor says, since it looks like EA is making Frostbite run for Switch, and we are getting full support from EA, potentially full support. We don't actually know if it'll be full support. We don't know if it's just going to be a game or two, but there's a potential. Do you think other developers will join in as well? I mean, other developers, like EA was like one of the last major developers not on Switch. We had Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, so you can argue Activision was in on it. We have games coming from Sega, from Bethesda, from 2K. We've had games. We've had games from Ubisoft. Like, EA was like the last big holdout that really only gave us FIFA and Faye. So, I mean, what other developers are we talking about? I mean, I know there's more developers out there. A lot of them are making exclusive games for other platforms. So I don't know. I mean, unless I think Valve is supposed to bring some games over, Portal or Portal 2. Do they even make games anymore? So yeah, I don't know what developers we're talking about. The entire indie community's on Switch. So, Illumi Donkey Kong says, do you think making your videos more family friendly would help your channel grow enough to make it worth the effort? Most of my videos are family friendly. What are you talking about? The only thing that's not family friendly are my late night live streams. Everything else I make, I would argue, is pretty family friendly. You can argue maybe some topics get pretty deep and pretty serious, but I mean, I'm 32 years old. I'm not going to talk to people like your little kids. I'm passionate about gaming, and we talk about games that aren't always meant for kids, like Doom. You know, so I don't know that like I ever consider my channel outside of my live streams to not be family friendly. So I think we are mostly a family-friendly channel. We have a lot of kids that watch our stuff. They get upset when they come check out our live streams. Like, please don't swear. I've heard that several times. Please don't swear. Like, they don't even mind me doing the shots. Like, I'll do shots of alcohol on late-night live streams, but they don't care about that. They don't care about people paying for me to do shots. They care about the fact that I dropped a swear word because they're not allowed to swear, and if the parents hear it, they're going to get in trouble. So, like, we're pretty much a family-friendly channel. I hardly ever say bad language outside of a live stream. So, you could argue, I guess more family friendly would be literally committing to being family friendly all the time, but I'm only going to commit to be myself, and if that's not good enough for success, then I'm not good enough to succeed. Shadow King 1982 says, what series will Square Enix most likely bring to Switch next? Final Fantasy 1 through 6 or one of their other franchises such as Star Ocean or Valkyrie Profile? I'm like drawing a blank on the game Square Enix has right now. Literally, I'm brain farting. I'm really... I'm going to ask this question again in the future, and I'll do some research. I'm literally coming up with a brain fart on Square Enix games right now. That's really sad. I know, man. Literally, it's like I have writer's block, but I'm not writing right now. Sorry, man. Ask that question another time. Jenny Funny Animations. When do you predict Animal Crossing will release? Summer. Like June, July. Probably July, so they can advertise it at E3. Do you believe the rumors of it being a spring, early summer release? Could be. I think summer makes more sense. Early summer or midsummer makes more sense than anything else. Animal Crossing just has that feeling of a summer kind of game. And it'll sell well whenever they release it. So, Cloud D1... Oh, I'm sorry, just Cloud D says, do you think Sony and Microsoft will release their exclusive games only on Switch? No. Well, the exclusives that sell their platforms just come to Switch. I think you're trolling. Game Kid says, the tabletop stand on my Switch broke, and I don't have my warranty anymore. Do you have any way to fix this without spending too much money? Depends on what you mean by broke. If the stand itself snapped in half, but the mechanism is still there, you can just buy stand replacements. There's metal ones out there, plastic ones are all cheap. They're all under $10. So that's one way to do it. Now, if the entire mechanism broke, that's a little more complicated because then you got to get a little kit. But even those are usually under $15. So yeah, you could also just use a case that has a kickstand on it, or use like I have. I don't have it on me right now, but I have these little razor blade things I reviewed, and they have a kickstand on them too. But yeah, replacing the kickstand is not that hard. It's really cheap. Literally just type in Nintendo Switch kickstand in Google, and you're going to get a zillion and one options to solve your problem, and all of them are really dirt cheap. And I've actually messed around with it, so I know how cheap it is. The thing is, it does require you to, if you have to replace the whole mechanism, it's going to require you taking off the back plate. For that, I do have a video on my channel about swapping back plates. If you want to look that up, maybe I'll put it down in the description for you for an easy lookup, because it's not hard to swap a back plate, but if you've never done it, knowing where each screw is, so you don't make a mistake I did. I stripped one of my screws that I didn't even need to take out. So let's see here. Brave Lee DX say, haha, I gotta ask this. What do you prefer, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch? Really? To play your games. Depends on the game. Depends on the game. Honestly, I want to play everything on Switch, but there are times I prefer mouse and keyboard controls. And yeah, you could argue you can do that on Switch, but it's why would I? If I'm using mouse and keyboard, I want a bigger monitor. There's times the thing is, I like 4K and 60 FPS. I don't know. I want all games to be on all platforms, so then I don't have to have a preference. I want them on my Switch for when I'm on the go, and then when I'm at home, sure, plop it on my Xbox or something. I'm kind of an equal opportunity gamer. I prefer Switch just because of my bias, but I play my Switch more often than anything else, if that matters. Ariel Lazarus says, what old IP would you most like to see Nintendo revive right now, and what do you want from the new games? Oh, jeez. Star Tropics. I just want a Star Tropic remastered, to be honest. What do I want the most from? I just want, well, yeah, for old IP, I just want them to reimagine the game, the Western style RPG. I don't know. I hope they don't screw it up, but let's see here. Sonic Prop 97 says, do you think Nintendo is finally aware that the only thing they can do wrong is their online? They are great at literally almost everything else but that. Not true. They're bad at a lot of things. Shall I count the ways? The design of the kickstand on the Switch, the design of the connection point of the Joy-Cons on the Switch that create wobble and use a plastic nub that's very easy to break. The easy way that the little, I already forgot what they're called, that the extra buttons you can slide on the Joy-Con to give it a ridge, and then with the wrist strap thing, those things, because I don't use them very often, how easy it is to slide them on the wrong way, that there's not something that blocks it from being able to be slid on the wrong way. Because when it is slid on the wrong way, that's when you break that little plastic nub, and suddenly your Joy-Cons just fly off your Switch. So there's just little design flaws in the Switch that are fine as long as they're fixed in a revision, because every product has its issues. But let's not act like Nintendo's perfect here. When you talk about they're great at literally almost everything else. I mean, Mario Tennis Aces lacks content. Just because it has more content than Ultra Smash doesn't mean that it has enough content. I'm trying to. Nintendo Labo kind of flopped a little bit. It's successful enough to continue, so I guess I shouldn't say that's a flop. I don't think it was as successful as I thought it would be. Let me think of another example. Mario Party. Super Mario Party. Great game, great gameplay. Love the mini games. Only 4 boards. We used to get 9, back on the N64. 9 boards to 4 today. Shouldn't we have more than 9 today? Shouldn't we be up to 12 to 15 boards in 2018, 2019? And we're instead losing boards. And the online mode, well, again, that's an online thing, so I guess I'll leave the online alone. So there's just a lot of little things. I can sit here and nitpick all day. Nintendo does a lot wrong. What they get right now is they are excellent right now at marketing Switch. I'm not sure they understand how they're doing it well, because there's some ads they put out there for Switch that are counterintuitive to the audience of Switch, but then a month later they remember who their audience is and then put out a good ad. So they're almost being successful in spite of themselves now. But, Nintendo's got a lot of great games. They're doing a lot of great things with Switch. The entire premise of Switch was great. Nintendo makes a lot of good decisions, but they still make plenty of baffling ones that remind you that Nintendo doesn't always understand their own audience or how to grow it. But Switch is growing in spite of it, because it's just a really great product that does have some great games. Some from Nintendo. Like a Grape says, do you think if they ported Call of Duty to the Switch, it would be successful? Yeah, I could think it could sell 1 million. I think it would be. We've seen Fortnite and other games. There's starting to be an audience on Switch for shooters. I think it would be successful and sell at least 1 million units. Zach Karinsky, do you think Nintendo is going to announce any big first-party announcements on the scale of Metroid Prime 4, Mario Odyssey, and Breath of the Wild? You mean Animal Crossing, Pokemon, New Generation, and Fire Emblem 3 Houses? I mean, I'm just throwing out some other big games they have coming. Yeah, of course. It's not like they're done making games. YM9001 says, how do you think HD remakes of Wii games would sell? Very well. I'll leave it at that. Lucas Bradlewarder says, what is your favorite handheld Zelda game? Oh, it's kind of a toss-up between A Link Between Worlds and Link's Awakening. DX, the DX version. It just adds a little color. There's kind of a toss-up between those. Link's Awakening is kind of like my default answer because it was my first ever Zelda game. But I really enjoyed A Link Between Worlds a lot. And it's kind of a toss-up between those two. Believe it or not, Triforce Heroes kind of climbs up my list as well. But don't worry, it doesn't top A Link Between Worlds or Link's Awakening for me. Some people will say, blasphemy, it tops the Minish Cap and the Oracle games. Well, I'm sorry. At least I didn't say Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, which is actually a really good game, by the way, that probably hardly any of you played because it didn't come out in the U.S. I think that's it. I think that's it for Prime Answers. So I said it was short. Maybe this was a little longer than I thought, but I'm tired. Time to edit this bad boy, and I'll see you in the next video.